We start with the name of Allah, Alhamdulillah, and we ask Allah to raise the rank of our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his al and his companions, and to protect his Muslim nation from that which he fears for them. Welcome, dear listeners. You are tuned into the Muslim Community Radio, and we are live in the studios of Tom from today in the Hookmudeen Program with His Eminence Sheikh Bilal Humaisi. How are you today, Sheikh Bilal?
Barakallah fika. I'm very delighted to be with you this afternoon in 2MFM studios.
The pleasure is all mine, Sheikh Bilal, once again, and I'm very happy to join you once again for another Hookmudeen Program, Sheikh. Yet it only feels like yesterday you and I were sitting in the studios in the Hookmudeen Program last year. It's 1 year ago. It feels like it was only yesterday, subhanAllah. As I'm sitting here and I'm introducing Hookmudeen, I'm remembering what it was like last year, subhanAllah. How time goes very fast, Sheikh Bilal.
Correct.
Barakallah fika, Sheikh. I hand over to you now to give us a short introduction for the Hookmudeen Program. And just before I hand over to you, Sheikh Bilal, the listeners, we are live in the studios. You can dial in on 9707-2747, and we are taking your calls today on this program. Fadal, Sheikh Bilal. Barakallah fika.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Lahu al-ni'mah wa lahu al-fadl wa lahu al-thana wal-hasan. وصلوات الله البر الرحيم والملائكة المقربين على سيدنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين وعلى جميع إخوانه من النبيين والمرسلين وآل كل والصالحين وسلام الله عليهم أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, inshallah ta'ala, we are going to talk about some benefits in starting this program. Let us plan our life around the Quran and the Sunnah. When you awake, that the first thing you do is praising Allah Azza wa Jal, dhikrullah. Then recite the protective words, awrad al-tahsin, and especially reciting Ayat al-Kursi, المعوذات قل أعوذ برب الفلق قل أعوذ برب الناس beside قل هو الله أحد سورة الإخلاص. So recite the protective words frequently and do not miss out. Be consistent in saying it every day, in the morning and in the evening. You have from Fajr time until after 3 hours, and also from Maghrib time until after 3 hours. And after saying the protective words, of course, after praying Jama'ah, whether you with your wife at home or you go to the masjid to pray Al-Fajr in Jama'ah, as the Prophet ﷺ commanded us to do. The Prophet said, what means, من صلى العشاء في جماعة فكأنما قام نصف الليل ومن صلى الفجر في جماعة فكأنما قام الليل كله. This is an advice from the Prophet ﷺ to pray Al-Isha in Jama'ah as well as Al-Fajr in Jama'ah and other prayers in Jama'ah as well. After doing so, you can head to work for your primarily worldly needs, but do not forget to place the right intention in the heart to go out to work today for the purpose of providing for your wife, your children, the obligatory sustenance in obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal alone. Obey Allah Ta'ala at work. Do not lie, do not cheat, do not swear at or curse or slander a fellow believer. And if someone shall fight you or slander you, say to them, Inni sa'im, Inni sa'im. I am fasting, I am fasting. When you fast, you must also refrain from sexual intercourse and abhorrent sayings. Spend your time in acts of obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal. When you do that, your time becomes valuable, and Allah Ta'ala will ease for you the feeling of thirst and hunger. Once you ascertain the setting of the sun, break your fast by eating dates, and if you do not have, then by drinking water. This is in accordance with the saying, the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then if you wish, before you continue eating, you may perform the sunset al-Maghrib prayer. Of course, don't forget to do it in Jama'ah. After you finish your meal, make your way to perform Salat al-Isha in the mosque, in al-Masjid, as well as to pray Salat al-Taraweeh or Qiyam Ramadan in the mosque. And recite as much as you can of the Holy Quran, and never waste your time watching TV, switching from one channel to another. Dear brothers and sisters, know that the night of Al-Qadr, which is the night of greatness, can fall in any night of Ramadan. So make many supplications, dua and prayers every night, especially in the last 10 days of Ramadan. Acts of worship done in the night of Al-Qadr is more rewarding than acts of worship done in 1,000 months which do not have the night of Al-Qadr in them. So spend your time wisely from the morning to the evening to the night by the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. روى البيهقي عن الصحابي الجليل سلمان الفارسي رضي الله عنه أنه قال: خطبنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أول يوم أو آخر يوم من شعبان، فقال: يا أيها الناس، قد أظلكم شهر عظيم مبارك، شهر فيه ليلة خير من 1000 شهر، شهر جعل الله صيامه فريضة وقيام ليله تطوعا، وهو شهر الصبر، والصبر ثوابه الجنة، شهر المواساة، من فطر فيه صائما كان مغفرة لذنوبه وعتق رقبته من النار، وكان له مثل أجره من غير أن ينقص من أجره شيء. قالوا أي الصحابة: يا رسول الله، ليس كلنا يجد ما يفطر الصائم. فقال عليه الصلاة والسلام: يعطي الله هذا الثواب من فطر صائما على تمرة أو على شربة ماء أو مذقة لبن، ومن سقى صائما سقاه الله من حوض شربة لا يظمأ بعدها حتى يدخل الجنة، وهو شهر أوله رحمة وأوسطه مغفرة وآخره عتق من النار. وقد ورد فيما رواه البيهقي في كتاب شعب الإيمان أن الله تعالى يعتق كل يوم من رمضان عند الإفطار 1000 عتيق من النار، وفي آخر يوم من شهر رمضان يعتق بقدر ما أعتق من أول الشهر إلى آخره. جعلنا الله وإياكم من عتقاء هذا الشهر العظيم رمضان.
Barakallah Fika, Sheikh Bilal. Thank you for that kind introduction. And I remind our listeners that we are live in the studios taking your calls as well as taking your messages and your questions, on WhatsApp, if that's how you choose. And Sheikh, will you have a caller with us? Would you take our first caller?
Inshallah.
Yes, hello?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Ya hello.
Ramadan Kareem. I would just like to ask the Sheikh a quick question.
Ahlan wa sahlan. Tfaddal, habibi.
Sheikh, we know with regards to the Jama'ah prayer that it's advised for if two brothers want to pray, that one brother should be on the right side of the Imam, behind him by a little bit.
Yep.
So what about if a person's praying with his wife or his mother? Was it mentioned where the female should stand? Right, left, behind him, exactly? No. Is it the same as if it was two men praying with each other?
They can stand behind him.
So if it's just a singular lady, should she stand on his right?
She can do so, and
Okay.
also she is allowed to stand behind.
Okay. Barakallahu fi.
Ameen wa fika.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
So the question was about the Imam and the Ma'mum.
Yes, إمام and مأموم زوج مع زوجته يصليان فهي تقف خلفه، ولو وقفت عن يمينه لا ضرر في ذلك.
نعم.
وإن كان هناك يصلون معه الذكور وإناث يصلون صفوفا،
And in the house, Sheikh, what you're saying is if you're praying with your mom and your sisters and your daughters, they can all
You
stand in
stand
the lines together.
up front,
The imam stands up front.
yes, and they will be standing behind you in a row.
And do we still separate the males and females
Of course,
within the
not
family
in
at the
same
house?
row.
Not in the
Yes.
same row.
Okay. The males stand first behind you,
No.
and then another row for the females.
Naam, Sheikh. Barakallah fik, ya Sheikh. So we have another caller of that, Sheikh. We'll take that one right away. Yes, hello.
الو السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
كيفك حبيبنا؟
أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا.
معك عماد.
أهلا وسهلا أستاذ عماد.
حبيبي فيني اسال سؤالي شيخ
أكيد
بلال؟
أكيد تفضل.
السلام عليكم شيخ بلال.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله
How are you?
وبركاته. الحمد لله بخير، بارك الله فيكم.
رمضان مبارك
على
هي
الجميع إن شاء
شيخ
الله،
بلال
علينا
حبيبنا.
وعليكم وعلى
معك
الجميع.
عماد.
أهلا وسهلا.
حبيبي شو اخباركم؟ ان شاء الله بخير. إن شاء الله
الحمد لله
إن شاء الله
على
رمضان
نعمه
مبارك على
الظاهرة
عائلتك إن شاء
والباطنة،
الله.
وعلى الجميع إن شاء الله، على كل السامعين.
آمين. حبيبي هاي شيخنا مثلا example like say example أنا صايم fasting. And I lay down like lunchtime إنه ارتاح rest little bit.
طيب.
And I slept about 2 hours.
أيوة.
Then I get up, I wash my face by accident, like after I drink some water
مم.
by accident or something. هل إنه واحد يفطر أو بيجي بده يصوم أو هو يعني خلص فطر؟
هو
You know what I
طالما ما أراد الشرب، هو مثلا كان عم يتمضمض بالوضوء فابتلع شيء من الماء إلى الداخل، يعني
No. sorry شيخ بلال مش هاي قصدي أنا.
لكن-
قصدي إنه غسل وجهه.
نعم
عرفت كيف؟
نعم.
He washed his face.
طيب.
After that جاب bottle water وهي drink it by accident يعني. You know what I mean?
أوكي، شرب مي يعني من
Yeah,
بعد.
شرب مي.
طيب.
إنه
ناسي
مثلاً
إنه
أو
صايم.
إيه
إذا كان ناسي إنه
نعم.
صايم لا يؤثر على صيامه، بدل صيامه صحيح.
لا قصدي أنا شيخ شيخ بلال قصدي أنا إنه لما يقوم واحد يغسل وجهه. You
طيب.
know what I mean?
طيب.
طيب إنه مثلا كان تعبان وغسل وجهه وارتاح له ساعتين afternoon.
طيب.
وقام شرب كباية مي.
إذا
طيب،
كان
حتى
شارب
مع
كباية
يعني
المي
you know.
ناسيا ولا ذاكرا أنه صائم.
لا يعني نسيت انه
أوكي.
يعني ما بكون واحد صايم على قومته من النوم دغري بحب انا لما ما تغرنا الكلمه لما اقوم من النوم انا
تشرب
بشرب
مي.
كبايه بشرب مي صبح.
طيب إذا
أو
نسيت
lunch time.
إذا نسيت أنك صائم فشربت أو أكلت، هذا لا يؤثر على
تعبان.
صحة الصيام، لا يؤثر طالما ناسيا.
وبعد اذا واحد كنت تعبان هيك وشرب مي.
إذا كان شارب مي ناسي أنه صايم، نسي تماما أنه صائم، فشرب شيء من الماء كما هو المعتاد، يعني هو من عادته بيشرب مي بس يفيق من النوم،
Yes.
نسي أنه صايم قام شرب مي، فإنما أطعمه الله وسقاه،
انه يعني بضله صايم.
بدله صايم.
الله يبارك فيك شيخ
آمين وفيك.
شيخ بلال وكل عام وانتم بخير وشهر
وأنتم
رمضان
بخير إن
مبارك.
شاء الله.
لنا ولكم إن شاء الله.
ايامكم ضل احلى.
إن شاء الله تعالى، ولكم بالمثل.
الله يبارك
ماشي،
فيكم.
ماشي.
آمين وفيكم.
ثانك يو السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
Barakallah fika, Sheikh Bilal. So the question there, essentially what we understood in the end, if a person forgets that he is fasting and drinks a glass of water, what is the judgment of that?
It doesn't invalidate
No.
his fast, even if he ate,
No.
regardless of the amount of food he consumed. Still, it does not invalidate his fast, as mentioned in the hadith.
No.
من نسي وهو صائم فأكل أو شرب فليتم صومه فإنما أطعمه الله وسقاه.
No.
That's a
SubhanAllah.
hadith crystal clear.
No.
That one, if he is forgetting that he was fasting and he drank something or he ate something, it does not invalidate his fast.
No, Sheikh.
He will carry on with his fast.
No. Sheikh, there's a few questions coming through here now around the determining the beginning of Ramadan. You know, there was a lot of confusion, and this happens every year. People ask, there's people that come up 2 weeks before Ramadan and they announce Ramadan via a means of astrology calculations. And I remember doing these kinds of equations when I was at uni, and I understand in these equations they use, you know, measures that are estimates. You know, like the distance between the Earth and the Moon. And unless someone got an actual physical tape measure or some sort of an instrument to measure the physical distance, there is still going to be a room for error with regards to these calculations that the astronomers use to calculate the birth of the new moon. Can you please clarify, how do we determine the beginning of the month of Ramadan, or any month within the year. But
Yes.
what in specific do we need to do for the month of Ramadan that's different for other months
Yeah.
of the year?
Correct. There are actually 12 months in the lunar calendar, and each of the months is either 29 or 30 days, and it is based on sighting the new crescent
No.
or completing the iddah of the month. If the hilal has been sighted, then we will announce the beginning of the month. If we did not see the hilal, then we have to complete the iddah 30 days, and the day after that is going to be the first of the month. Now, the scholars of the four madhahib, like the Hanafiya, Malikiya, Shafi'iyya, and Hanabila, agreed that the basis for determining the beginning of Ramadan is as follows. The crescent is usually observed after the sunset of the 29th day of Sha'ban, which coincided with last Friday. Last Friday was the 29th day of Sha'ban. So after Maghrib, they have to sight for the new moon. Because we have seen the hilal, we said to the people, we announced to the people that tomorrow, Saturday, is going to be the first of the month. If we did not see the hilal for a reason, then we have to complete the iddah of Sha'ban, and based on that, Ramadan is going to be Sunday. But since we sighted the hilal, the new moon, we announced it to the public that Saturday is the first of the month of Ramadan. Now, however, if the hilal is not sighted, then the next day will be the 30th of Sha'ban, and the day after is going to be the beginning of the month of Ramadan. Muslims throughout the countries implemented this practice, and the highly knowledgeable scholars of Islam ruled accordingly. Moreover, they stated that the reliance is on this rule, and no attention is given to the sayings of mathematicians, astronomers, nor are their sayings relied upon in determining the beginning and ending of fasting. Now, in determining the beginning of the month of Shawwal, we have to rely on the testimony of two male upright Muslims. For the beginning of Ramadan, one witness will suffice, as mentioned in the hadith that the honorable Sahabi companion Abdullah, the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhuma, sighted the hilal. He told the Prophet announced to the public the beginning of Ramadan, and he fasted and ordered people to start fasting. Al-Bukhari and Muslim and others narrated from the root of Abdullah ibn Umar, may Allah Ta'ala raise his rank, that he said what means the lunar month is 29 nights, so do not fast until you sight the crescent. However, if it was cloudy, then complete the count to 30 days. Now, also Imam Ahmad, Imam Muslim, Abu Dawood, and Nasa'i narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said what means we do not rely on writings or calculations to determine the beginning or the end of the month. The month is either 29 or 30 days. And as I said, the scholars of Islam from the four madhahib all agreed that the calculations of the astronomer have no significance. Thus, they do not determine the beginning of fasting, and it is a sin to rely on them for that purpose. So blessed are those who abide by the Muslim Jama'ah, their masses of scholars, and the sayings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Barakallah fika, Sheikh Bilal. So we understand from that we have to sight the crescent of the moon to determine the first day of Ramadan, and not the birth of the moon, which is used by the calculations.
The hadith is clear that the reliance is on sighting the hilal, not birthing the hilal, sighting the hilal.
So,
and sighting the hilal by seeing it with the naked eye.
With the naked eye.
With the naked eye. We are not required to use technology and using the instruments like telescope and others in determining the beginning of the month of Ramadan. Just by sighting it with your naked eye, if you saw the hilal, that's it. Otherwise, you complete the adda.
طب شيخي, there's a lot of people now, and there's groups, and they have like websites where they use like anyone from around Australia who sighted the crescent to determine the beginning of Ramadan in Australia. But I'm not really sure if they sight the crescent all year round. So you could say, assuming, if I were to make an assumption here, they would be using whatever is announced via calculation for all the different months of the year. But then because Ramadan is, a very famous month and everyone's fasting, they're all looking to when Ramadan starts. How do you know exactly when it starts if you've used half of 3/4 of the year based on calculation to determine the birth of the new moon, and then you go sight the crescent for the month of Ramadan once a year, really, when you have groups, people all around Australia, Brisbane,
Yes.
Perth, and all these different states looking for the moon. How does that work, Sheikh? What do we do there?
In order to sight the hilal, you need to know when was the beginning of the month.
No.
Based on what you are sighting the hilal tonight, if you did not know the beginning of the month. Based on the beginning of the month, you would be able to build on that and say today is the 29th day, and let us sight the hilal. The Prophet said, "Sumu li ru'yatihi," start up fasting upon sighting the hilal, وَأَفْطِرُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ, and break your fast upon sighting the hilal. That's crystal clear. فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ, if you were blocked from seeing it, فَأَكْمِلُوا عِدَّةَ شَعْبَانَ 30, continue the عدة of Sha'ban 30 days. That's simple.
No.
That's simple. You do not have to go to the uni to find out this conclusion. It's very simple and easy. And as Imam Shafi'i relied upon one testimony, the testimony of one person, one witness who is fulfilling the conditions, we can rely on this. And we can confirm the beginning of the month based on this rule.
No. So here we're discussing the importance of monitoring the different months of the year, so that way you can determine what month you're in. For definitely when it comes to the month of Sha'ban, then you can monitor the month of Sha'ban, so you know when to look for the moon for the month of Ramadan.
And also in the Hanafi madhab, if the hilal has been sighted in the Western countries, for instance, those who are living in the Eastern countries are obligated to start fasting, relying on the testimony of those Muslims who are away from this country which you live in.
So Sheikh, that leads me on then to the next question that we have here now is, if we are looking for the moon in Australia, and as my question earlier, we've only really looked at sort of half the year, we're not really sure, we're just sort of following whatever testimony anyone gives around whether they sighted the moon or not. And as you know, in Australia, I've lived here pretty much all my life, and I've never really seen the first moon. It's like we're too far down under to really be able to see the first moon. All the moon sighting is always on the other side of the world every year, more so than it is on this side of the world. So then if we are living here, and as you mentioned, someone else sights the moon in another part of the world, in another country, what do we do now?
As I said, the Hanafi school says you can rely on the testimony of those Muslims who are living far away in a country. Like we are in Australia, and someone in Indonesia, for instance. Someone in Indonesia sighted the hilal, and he was classified as trustworthy, a reliable person whom you can rely on in determining the beginning of the month. So if he sighted the hilal and he gave his testimony to the judge, and the judge, based on his testimony, announced to the public the beginning of the month, we can rely on. However, if you're following Imam Shafi'i, and you are not allowed to rely on a different country, which there is a difference in time between you and them, and the distance is more than the shortening distance of the prayer, masafat qasr. Like for instance, Muslims living in Sydney and Muslims living in Melbourne, they cannot rely on each other in determining the beginning and the end of the lunar months. Each one of them must follow his own sight.
Barakallah fika, Sheikh Bilal. So now now that we have determined the beginning of the month of Ramadan, our next question that we have here in front of us is, what are the inner rules of fasting? How do we fast properly as a nation? What are some of its inner rules and recommended matters, so that way we know and that way we can confirm that we are fasting properly in accordance with the rules of the religion that our Master Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us.
The integrals of fasting are 5. The first is the intention. أركان الصيام 5. أولها النية. النية, to place the intention in your heart, to establish the intention in your heart that you are fasting the following day of Ramadan in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أول أركان الصيام النية عملا بالحديث الشريف إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام من لم يبيت الصيام قبل الفجر فلا صيام له. يعني من لم يبيت الصيام، نية الصيام تكون بالليل قبل الفجر، فلا صيام له. لو واحد لم ينوي بالمرة، صار المغرب ولم ينوي صيام اليوم التالي من رمضان حتى خرج وقت الفجر وهو لم ينوي، صيامه لا يكون صحيحا في مذهب الإمام الشافعي رحمه الله. في مذهب الإمام أبي حنيفة إن كان نوى في الليل أو بعد الفجر في رمضان ما قبل الزوال قبل الظهر، يعني يصح له ذلك في مذهب الإمام أبي حنيفة. So according to the Hanafi school, the time of the extension of the intention is extendable. You have time from after Maghrib until before Dhuhr for fasting the month of Ramadan. So if you did not fast at night, you did not miss out the intention. You still have time to do it, but however, just before Dhuhr. Extendable time. يعني you have a lot of time to intend. So this is the first of the integrals. هذا أول أركان الصيام. والركن الثاني من الأركان الإمساك عن الأكل والشرب وعن إدخال كل ما له حجم إلى الجوف عن طريق منفذ مفتوح. The second integral is to abstain from eating and drinking and inserting anything to the body cavity through an open inlet. المنافذ المفتوحة بالجسد هي 5: الفم والأنف والأذن والقبل والدبر. The 5 open inlets in the body are 5. The first, the mouth, the nose, the ears, and the private parts, front and back, anus and vagina. These are the 5 open inlets of the body. So inserting anything to the body cavity or the head through an open inlet, through any of these 5 open inlets, breaks one's fast. أما من نسي وهو صائم فأكل أو شرب فليتم صومه فإنما أطعمه الله وسقاه. If one forgot that he was fasting and based on that he ate something or he drank something, it does not invalidate his fast. He may continue fasting the month of Ramadan. ويجب معرفة طرفي النهار الفجر والمغرب. يجب معرفة طرفي النهار لأن الله يقول فكلوا واشربوا حتى يتبين لكم الخيط الأبيض من الخيط الأسود من الفجر ثم أتموا الصيام إلى الليل. يعني we have to know the beginning of the day and the end of the day. The beginning of the day is when the Maghrib time sets, is when Fajr time sets in. The Fajr, which is the white horizontal line that appears in the western horizon, when this line appears, this is an indication of the beginning of the time of Fajr. And then the end of the day is by the setting in of the disk of the sun. The full disk, when it sets in the western horizon, this is when Maghrib time starts. And an indication for that is to look at the eastern horizon. If you saw the darkness is coming from that location, this is an indication that Maghrib time has set in. فيجب معرفة طرفي النهار وطرفا النهار هما الفجر والمغرب كما ذكرنا في الآية الكريمة. الفجر هو البياض الأفقي المعترض الذي يظهر في الأفق الشرقي ويكون معه شيء من الحمرة، ثم يظهر قرص الشمس ويبقى النهار إلى غروب الشمس، غروب كامل قرص الشمس. فإذا غرب كامل قرص الشمس يكون قد دخل وقت المغرب وانتهى النهار. ومن العلامات التي تدل على دخول وقت المغرب أن تنظر إلى الأفق الشرقي، فإذا وجدت الظلمة أقبلت من هناك فهذه علامة على دخول وقت المغرب. هكذا كما جاء في الحديث: إذا غربت الشمس من ها هنا، وأشار النبي بيده ناحية المغرب، وأقبل الظلام من ها هنا وأشار بيده ناحية المشرق، فقد أفطر الصائم. So when you are certain that Maghrib time has set in, just go ahead and break your fast. عندما نتأكد من دخول وقت المغرب نبادر إلى الفطر عملا بالحديث: لا يزال الناس بخير ما عجلوا الفطر. So quickening the process of breaking your fast when you are certain that Maghrib time has set in is something recommended as mentioned in the hadith.
Barakallah fika, Sheikh Bilal. Remind our listeners that we're live in the studios and we are taking your calls on 9707-2747 as well as on the WhatsApp messaging that we're taking your calls as well. Sheikh, we have a question here on WhatsApp sent in Arabic, but I've tried to translate it. I think there's a question there around some adults who are either 17 or 19 years old and they break their fast without a legitimate reason. Mm-hmm. And they're fasting during the day, for example, and they break their fast. What is the judgment of that?
من أفطر لغير عذر شرعي فقد عصى الله تبارك وتعالى، وهذه معصية كبيرة. So the one who breaks his fast for no valid Islamic reason, it is sinful, it is a major sin to do so. فيجب على المسلم أن يبقى صائما عندما يستطيع. أما إن ترك الصيام أفسد صومه بغير عذر شرعي فقد عصى الله تعالى معصية كبيرة. كما أن الصلاة فرض كذلك الصيام فرض، فيجب على المسلم أن يبقى صائما باقي النهار إن أكل أو شرب، وعليه التوبة إلى الله عز وجل وقضاء هذا اليوم فورا بعد يوم العيد. يعني the one who broke his fast for no valid Islamic reason, he must remain fasting. He should remain fasting the rest of the day, and he must repent to Allah Azza wa Jal for the sin he committed and to make up this missed day after the day of Eid with no further delay, because he wasn't excused in breaking his fast.
Barakallah fika, Sheikh Bilal. Thank you for that answer. And we have another question here, Sheikh. Who are exempt from fasting the month of Ramadan?
There are a number of types of people who are exempted from fasting the month of Ramadan. Let us start with the elderly people. If they cannot tolerate the hardship of fasting, they could not fast at all throughout the year, this person is not obligated to fast. Rather, he is obligated to pay the fidya, which is like a type of compensation, which is, in replacing the fast, because they could not make it, they have to pay fidya instead, expiation. And the fidya for every day, if he wants to pay the monetary value of this, is about $15 per day. If you want to send it over to overseas, you are allowed to do so, to send your fidya overseas. But it must be, as I said, the value of a lunch and a dinner, which makes about $15 per day.
No.
The menstruating woman, the woman in her menstruation, she is not allowed to fast. However, if she abstained from eating and drinking because she doesn't feel hungry, she is allowed to do so without the intention of fasting, but she must make up the missed days after Ramadan. And she have flexibility in time to make up until the coming year. Yani she has basically 1 full year to make up the missed days.
No.
The child who is non-pubescent is not obligated to fast. However, if he is 7 lunar years, then his guardian must order him or her to start fasting if their body can tolerate fasting. If his body or her body cannot tolerate fasting, he cannot force them to fast. The traveler, the one who is traveling a long travel, he's traveling overseas, for instance, during Ramadan, he is allowed to break his fast. He's not obligated, but however, he is allowed to break his fast because he has a permissibility to break his fast, as Allah Ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ. That's a clear evidence from the Quran that if one was traveling a travel which is not sinful, it could be a travel, permissible travel, such as traveling to have a holiday. He is allowed to break his fast if he wanted to. However, if he remained fasting, that's better for him. As Allah Ta'ala said, وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. So it's better for one who is traveling to continue fasting while traveling.
SubhanAllah, Shaykh, it's a long day. Like if you travel at 6 o'clock in the morning, which is the normal flight I prefer to take, yeah, by the time you arrive to your first destination, which normally for us going to the Middle East is Dubai,
Correct.
you know, you left at 6 a.m., you've been flying for 15 hours close, and you get there, it's only like 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock.
Yes.
You know, so you fast 15 hours.
Yes, but if you
it's only
traveled
12
at night,
o'clock.
if you traveled at night,
yes.
it works out the opposite.
So you have to think about how you're going to travel during the month of Ramadan.
Yeah.
Naam. Subhanallah, barakallah fika, Shaykhi.
Ameen.
So just get into it quickly. So you mentioned there the person who is unable to fast would pay the value of two meals, lunch and dinner, which is about $15. That number, isn't it, Shaykhi, the same as zakat this year? The $15?
Yes.
Is it the same way to calculate it?
No, it's not the value of lunch and dinner. It works out something else for zakat al-fitr.
No. That was a big topic in
yes,
yesterday's
inshallah, we'll be
Hookmudeen.
explaining it according to the 4 schools of thought.
No. Barakallah fika, Shaykhi. So, moving on with our show here, Shaykhi, we've gone over the determination of the beginning of Ramadan. We've gone over some integrals of Ramadan. We've gone over a little bit about what some of the invalidators of fasting. Can you give us some more examples, Shaykhi, about what are some of the invalidators of fasting during the month of Ramadan?
Of course, eating and drinking, as we said, inserting anything to the body cavity through an open inlet. Even if one swallowed a tiny stone, this breaks his fast. Now, also, using the puffer during the daytime of Ramadan breaks one's fast. If someone is asthmatic, he is not allowed to take it and claim that I'm still fasting. If he is in need of it, well, he should take it to save himself from getting harmed. However, he invalidated his fast because since he has a valid excuse, being sick, he must make up the missed day after Ramadan. But he cannot claim and say, I'm still fasting, and while inhaling the puffer.
No.
Also, having a drops in one's nose, this also invalidates one's fast. Having the drops in the eye does not invalidate one's fast. Inducing vomit also one of the invalidators of fast. But if one vomited involuntarily, he was forced to do so. He didn't do it by himself. That's the natural reaction of the body. He vomited and he rinsed his mouth properly, and he did not swallow any of the contaminated saliva to the inside. His fasting is still valid, and he will carry on with his fast. Now, if one invalidated his fast by engaging sexual intercourse during the daytime of Ramadan. This breaks one's fast, whether he and she together.
No.
And they must repent to Allah Azza wa Jal and make up the missed day or days if they did it more than once in Ramadan.
Allahu Akbar.
Yes, if they did it twice or 3 times, then 3 days must be made up. On top of that, kaffara, 3 kaffara, which is the expiation. Al-kaffara, which is to free a Muslim slave, which are non-existing nowadays.
Yes, no.
The second option is to fast 2 consecutive months. They could be 29 each month or 29, 30.
2 months in a row.
Yes. And if they broke the fast of one of the days for a valid reason, they have to redo it from the beginning.
I think, Sheikh, most people are very happy with Eid al-Fitr, let alone waiting another 29 or 30 days to continue. And then if something happens, they have to make them up all over again, starting from day one. Yeah,
And imagine someone fasted 50 days, making up the kaffara, and on the 51st day, he broke his fast because he was sick. He should redo the 50 days again.
I think this is a reflection on the importance of fasting
holding
during the month of
oneself
Ramadan. Yes,
and abstaining from having this relationship.
I think a lot of people today, Sheikh, they take the month of Ramadan, for them it just becomes a matter about not eating, and then really missing the whole point and the beauty of the month of Ramadan. And the benefit that, there's a lot of doctors today talking about the benefit of intermittent fasting. And there's one person that I read about recently. He was a Japanese guy. He was talking about how the body starts to do all these things within about 13 or 14 hours of fasting. So you get to a point where, I think he won some sort of prize about, he was looking at these cells and how they start to, how Allah generates them and how they start to revive and all of that within around 13, 14 hours of fasting. There's a lot of benefit that even like since the Prophet ﷺ over 1400 years ago told us to start fasting, even as of today, people are still finding benefits in holding and abstaining from food for the human body.
Yeah, correct.
Subhanallah. Barakallahu fika, Shaykh. And we're coming close to the end of our program. We just have one more question here in front of us. What are the prayers that are performed during the nights of Ramadan?
We have 2 types of prayers which we are going to talk about. Of course, I'm not talking about Isha and Maghrib prayer. We are talking about Taraweeh prayer. Taraweeh prayer, which are optional and they are non-obligatory prayer. And Taraweeh consists of 20 rak'ahs. Now, if you wanted to pray less than that, if you wanted to make up or to pray 8 rak'ahs only or 10 rak'ahs only, they are called Qiyam al-Layl. It's not Taraweeh anymore. Taraweeh is one saying 20 rak'ahs. And you do 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 and so on. But if you wanted to pray 8 or 10 or 12, they are called Qiyam al-Layl. They are not anymore called Taraweeh. At-Taraweeh is Sunnah, and it could be done in Jama'ah or solo. Taraweeh, when you perform it, you do not do adhan or iqama for it. You can say any other statement like what in some mosques nowadays they do. They call people to the prayer without adhan or iqama. And then also people would pray Salat al-Witr in Jama'ah. Salat al-Witr in Jama'ah, al-Witr according to Imam al-Shafi'i, starting from 1 rak'ah, the minimum is 1 rak'ah.
No.
And you may do it with the introductory prayer, Muqaddimat al-Witr, 2 followed by 1 rak'ah, or 2 by 2 then by 1, or 2 by 2 by 2 and then 1. So the last rak'ah is Rak'at al-Witr. You may pray 100 rak'ahs and then you end up doing 1 extra rak'ah, which is Rak'at al-Witr. So all the 100 rak'ahs you prayed it are called Muqaddimat al-Witr. introductory for Salat al-Witr. And this also can be done in Jama'ah, to pray al-Witr in Jama'ah every night during the month of Ramadan.
Barakallah fika, Sheikh Bilal. And this concludes our Hookmudeen program for today. We thank you, Sheikh, for joining us.
Barakallah
If you'd
fikum.
like to end the program with a short and pleasing supplication, Barakallah fika, that would be very nice.
Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala sayyidina rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawalah. اللهم تقبل منا الصلاة والصيام والركوع والسجود والقيام واجعلنا من عتقائك من النيران. اللهم اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات إنك يا ربنا سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات. اللهم أكرمنا برؤية ليلة القدر المباركة وأكرمنا بالدعاء والصلاة وقراءة القرآن فيها. اللهم أكرمنا برؤية الملائكة الكرام يا ربنا يا كريم. اللهم نسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، ونعوذ بك اللهم من شر ما استعاذ منه عبدك ونبيك محمد، وأنت المستعان وعليك البلاغ، ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون، وسلام على المرسلين، والحمد لله رب العالمين، والله تعالى أعلم وأحكم.
Barakallah fika, Sheikh Bilal.
آمين.